Hey everybody, and welcome to the September Q&A. I hope that you're doing well. I am joined, as always, by my beautiful wife, Kim.
Hi.
Hey. And we are going to run through your questions. We have about 50 or so, and we're both recovering from strep throat at the moment, so if for whatever reason we don't make it through as much as normal, that's why, because our throats are slowly swelling. Or, that's what it feels like it's going to happen. We tried to preempt it. We both took ibuprofen.
And we have tea with honey.
Yeah, we both have tea and honey. So we're going to do what we can to make it through. We're mostly on the other side of strep throat right now.
Yeah.
But that's why the Q&A is, a couple days late.
Yes.
So, without further to-do, Kim will be reading the questions.
All right.
I'll answer and we'll talk.
Okay. First question comes from Amy L. Time for Q&A already? Nice. Here's my question. You've mentioned more than once in past Q&As that aiming to be a high-level artist would be the best bet. For a number of reasons, like there's less competition at the top, what do you then consider the behavior skills indicators of high-level artists? For example, versatility, track record of getting things done. What separates the high-level artist from the average level ones? Thanks again for organizing this. It's immensely educational and entertaining. I sometimes listen to these while doing non-art related day job.
Side note, just real quick before jumping into the question.
Yeah.
This will hopefully be the last video where Kim is severely lagging because we're running a 4K camera over there, so that's why it's so choppy. We bought a M1 laptop and it's the new Apple Pro one. So we're gonna run two cameras separately, and hopefully this will be the end of that. I think that I get how you could take what I said and go in that direction with it. I should have probably been a bit more clear. I didn't mean necessarily that you should be like a high-level artist. Like, who knows what that means? Because there's so many variations of a high-level artist. You don't all need to have the same exact behaviors. There's high-level artists. Actually, there's a really great explanation. If you're looking for that, you should check out, what's his name? The guy Neil Gaiman. If you watch Neil Gaiman's commencement speech, I think that's really all you have to search for. He has a really great breakdown of how you make it as a freelance artist, and he talks about the different things that you'll need in order to become that person. Like if you're a really nice person to get along with and you deliver on time, that's the only thing you need to be. Or if you're amazing at what you do, but you don't deliver on time, that's okay too. It's like but it's always good to hear from you. That's what he says. It's like, but you're late sometimes. It's like 2 out of the 3 is good. So it's like, he breaks down this whole thing of that. Anyway, what I meant to say is that you shoot for the highest place in your career, whatever that could possibly be to you. It doesn't need to be some exact measure. And I'm not saying that like you'll know when you get there, but I'm saying that if you go into anything thinking that I'll be okay if I'm just good enough, that thing of thinking like just good enough, it's a way of kind of stopping yourself. I think it gives you a nice excuse to kind of be like, that's good enough, and just you never really get to some peak. And I just mean by becoming a great artist that you're aiming for something that seems impossible. Like you're aiming for some high level that seems unattainable and extremely difficult. If you shoot for that, no matter where you land, it'll probably be further than where you would have ended up if you told yourself you just wanted to be comfortable, regular artist.
Or that if you're telling yourself like, I shouldn't risk it. Not that you should risk everything, obviously, your responsibilities, but that you shouldn't go for something because I probably wouldn't get it anyway, or I probably wouldn't. But why not?
Yeah, I mean, if you're serious about anything that you do, you're basically pushing yourself to your ultimate limit in order to see where you end up.
Yeah. Bren Turner says, "Hi, hope everything's fine for you guys. Quick question. How's the PDF stuff doing? Think it'll be available anytime soon? Thank you."
I haven't been working on it in a little bit. I've been trying to make up, obviously, like, that's the thing that is kind of next on the finish it list that I have because Bloodborne was the first one. Bloodborne was the one that had been living in the background forever, and I just needed to find a way to finish that piece.
Just lingering.
Yeah. Like, now that I'm finishing pieces really fast with the new approach, I feel more comfortable kind of doing the regular things I was doing, like the PDF. But I think that I just need to really set aside time to complete it. I have the whole thing outlined and chunks of it are written out, and there's so much stuff that I've talked about a million times that it's not like I'm having to come up with new things. So once I sit down and just knock it out, it'll come together quick. But
you're also, I mean, we've talked about it because I kind of brought it up too as like this is on the list of things to complete. And you've just talked about wanting to not just like put out, you don't want it just to be like a blog post or like a tweet, kind of like casual. Like you really want to sit down and write it.
It's like
take your time.
It's like a short little book.
Yeah, like you want to put out like a professional product, if you will, that people are paying for it, you know.
Yeah, I think it's it's probably next on the list as far as something outside of direct artwork is concerned. That's probably the next long form thing that I'm considering. It's just like a sit down and, wrap up type of deal. Bloodborne was the last one of that because that just took a million years. So
right now there's no date. Yeah, it's just more of a like, it is on the list. We do know that it needs to be done. We've gone through everything that isn't complete or hasn't been complete.
I would say a quarter of it is done.
Yeah.
But
we've kind of run through, like, we know it's there.
Yeah.
But we appreciate everyone's patience. Especially now, with the big change and me coming along, it's like, oh, okay, well now hopefully everything is double. But I can't write that for you just because that's not what I'm here for. So,
yeah.
Still only one person. I can't draw either. If you're part of the Discord, Nick Yurkonis says, "Dave, Kim, how the hell are ya? Dave, did you ever find a balance between doing studies and creating your own art? As I learn, I find it hard to not focus on studies. So, while my sketchbooks are filled with hands, eyes, and other parts, I don't have a large collection of my own original work. Stay cool."
We'll try.
How are we? We're okay.
Yeah, we're doing good.
Yeah, just getting over being sick. That's what I'm thinking about. But otherwise, we're good.
A 2-year-old and a baby, so.
Yeah. As good as we can be.
It's what rolls. It's what happens. You get punched.
Balance between studies and creating your own art.
I don't do a ton of direct studies. I think what I mostly do is if I run into a wall in a piece, I will take whatever reference I can find online and I will use that to plug into what I'm doing, and that'll be the study that I have. Or I'll take a reference photography type of deal. So let me pull this up just because it's funny. So this is the pose I had for Char for the Gundam painting. So I just posed my really, really cool, what's his name?
Jason Statham?
Yeah, my nude Jason Statham.
Where his body is much more tan than his face somehow.
Yeah, these bodies have interchangeable heads. So I do things like that. Like I'll take a reference photo for something, and then I'll do kind of studies of how that pose works, or how the anatomy is, or how the light casts shadow on different parts. And then I just finished the PokeQuest Halloween one, and on that one I basically did studies well, I did kind of studies within the painting of like Pikachu from Detective Pikachu and how Detective Pikachu was lit in the movie and how they textured things. Just because realistic Pokemon's already been done, so why not borrow from the things that actually worked within the movie? So I reference things like that. I find that by continually doing that, I don't start with reference in my pieces. I try to go imagination first, just so I get that high energy of kind of, coming up with an idea and getting it down on paper. I don't want reference to keep me rigid in the start. And so once I have that high energy thing down, I'll then reference something after the fact to hopefully back up my imaginative work. And that's how I tend to loop in studies, so that like over time I'm getting better at all of those things. And I have a really intense kind of like, I'm very purpose driven. So if I'm not doing something for something, it's hard for me to put things into it. So I find that if I'm doing a comic, I'll naturally get better with anatomy and hands and feet and all that through repetition of drawing them. And that's kind of where I will, nudge in studies.
So do you have any recommendations? I know this person didn't ask that, but they're finding it hard hard not to focus on studies. Just because they have like a sketchbook filled with like all of these things, like eyes, hands, other parts, things like that. Like, what would you recommend?
I really do think that you should just take time away to do imaginative work often. It's the same idea of...
Would you say like applying all of those in imaginative work? Like saying...
It should happen naturally, but yes. I think that in the same way that, like, it's funny to kind of come at it from that angle, because everybody's the opposite of what you just said. Most people hate doing studies, and then they enjoy drawing goblins. So all they draw is goblins, and they never get better. And it's like, yeah, because you're just doing work that you like doing, and you're still sitting in all your old crutches, and you don't have a ton of ways to push yourself, and you're not really trying to get out of the box and push into new areas and learn structure, anatomy, whatever. So as much as studying anatomy is like a muscle for you to learn and get better at art, so is imaginative work. If you let imaginative work suffer because you're solely focused on learning, then it can become a problem of just too much of one thing over the other, making one of them fall a bit behind and be a bit more stagnant. Like, you have to build up. Like, I'll just put it in this way. So like, I was so involved in concept art community. I was so involved in my industries community. I was one of the people who, just to use this as a reference for what's popular today, I was one of the people that would have sat on a site like ArtStation and just looked at what everybody else was doing. I might have done something a little different, but it would have been pretty similar in terms of tone and whatever to what they were doing. And I found that even hurt my imagination, where I needed to be like, no, don't look at any one thing. It doesn't mean don't ever look at ArtStation, but don't look at any one narrow field for too long, because you'll eventually just get stuck repeating what everybody's doing in there, and it pigeonholes you into this one spot. And if you want to be different and you want to have a broader appeal, you kind of have to look at everybody. And once you start to kind of take a break from even your own little industry, you start to kind of open up to all the other possibilities of what you could be doing. And that changes your style, and it changes how you think, how you use your imagination. I've heard the thing of saying like, you prepare so that when it's time to perform, you're not thinking about anything. It's ingrained in you. It's muscle memory. That's kind of what studies are, and that's kind of what imagination work is. It's like, you want as many of those barriers to being able to do what's in your mind. You want as many of those down as possible, so that when you're working, you're just free flowing coming up with ideas, and all of these kind of structural things don't even come into play because there's nothing holding you back from pursuing, those goals, and it just flows better, much better, and then you can just think and have fun, draw, whatever.
I think. Sorry, that was my phone.
Oh.
I think that if I can add just like one more analogy before I move to the next question, it'd be like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym 5 days a week and work on arms only, right? You never skip leg day. You just
You could.
You shouldn't. It looks weird.
Yeah.
But I think, and you've mentioned it before, I know we've talked about it briefly too, and it was talked about in the Discord, but a schedule. So let's just say if you really want to force yourself into doing that, say I only have 2 hours to do studies, and I'll focus on studies alone, and then the rest of the time I have to put in imaginative work for this many hours, and that way you are balancing it, because that's really what the goal is, right? Is that you still need the studies, but you also need to do the imaginative work. So then,
well, studies in our I'm just saying this in terms of illustration work. Studies are fine. Being a realistic artist is fine, but it's all absolutely nothing without ideas. It's just a base of skill that you use to hang ideas on.
yeah.
But the ideas are everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can work that muscle too, but you gotta balance it and be well-rounded and do it all, right? So I think a schedule probably would be the best way.
Yeah. Structure.
Yeah. Esteban Sanchez. I don't know what Gorbino is, so I was laughing because I was Googling it. Well,
I thought you were laughing at his Spanish name.
no, I was
You were
laughing
like,
because I was Googling that while you were answering the last one. Hey, Gorbino. I was like, is that something that I should know? I've never heard that word before. What's a building place you've been trapped in? I'm trapped in the corner right now. Also, would be interested in hearing something about those thieving bastards that Dan has mentioned in the past. Bastards. Also, how have you done... how have you gone about respectfully declining work from clients when your workload is too much? Life stuff is getting heavy.
Whoa, okay. There's a real question in there too. Buildings I've been trapped in. Actually, I should have read this beforehand just so I could think about it, because those questions I could make up a story, but I'm sure I've been trapped. I know I've been trapped in places as a kid. I'm trying to think of one that's entertaining.
Were you guys trapped in that house that you went to that was like an old like medical, like whatever?
No, there was if anybody knows this, the old tuberculosis wards. You go on those websites when you're a teenager, what are the most haunted places in my state or whatever.
Yeah.
So we used to go to them because I was genuinely interested. I just wanted to see a ghost, because I was like, I didn't think I'd be scared. So I was like, I just want to see one. I want to be the first person to just see one and then talk to one. That was like what I had in my head. I was like, I'm not going to freak out. I'm just going to talk to a ghost. Really, the only thing that happens is you go into these places and you find out that homeless people have been living there for a really long time, and people go there to do drugs.
Yeah.
And then, they're really cool to go look through, but those are pretty like sketchy places where the floors have holes in them, and like you can fall down 3 stories and whatever. Those like.
So, but you've never been trapped? The ghost never trapped you in there?
The ghost never trapped me. I did find.
The homeless people never trapped you?
I did find the cremation room that they had.
Nice.
Because they had to burn all the bodies. Like, I guess at all those wards, they had to burn all the bodies there. And they had a thing where, like, they're all set up for a certain type... they're all set up so that, like, wind goes through them in a certain way.
You need, like, negative airflow rooms for TB.
Right. So it's kind of interesting, like, going through them. But anyway, I've been in a lot of abandoned buildings from being a little kid. Went in a barn and found a bunch of dead crows.
You also went in a barn and found somebody who was trapped in a building.
Oh, that's true.
That kind of is relevant.
I wasn't trapped in the building, but I did find a man who was dying in a building.
Yeah.
Who had heat stroke, or probably had heat stroke. I'm not a doctor, so I didn't.
You were also
I
a
didn't-
teenager.
Yeah, I didn't diagnose him on the spot.
You're like, can you open your eyes for me? Look this way, look this way.
He's got heat stroke, guys.
Yeah.
Stat. So anyway, yeah, I found a kid,
He's got
Gave him
heat stroke
some-
stat.
gave him some water and things, and then got him back on his feet. And his name was Super Mike eventually, because he wanted a super bike and he wanted to go wah, wah, and that's what he used to say. He had, something was wrong with him mentally.
He was
But,
just like a groundskeeper for that.
yeah, he was
like
a
the storage.
groundskeeper for this place we broke into that was an old like amusement place. It's not an amusement park, but it was called Super Sports. So we went in there to see if anything was left, and they had like go-karts and bumper boats and stuff, and he was in there. And we were like thieves and teenagers just doing dangerous stuff. And he was so happy that we saved him that he let us take stuff for free. He was like, I'm the groundskeeper, you can just have whatever you want, you saved my life. And we were like, we love you. And then we ended up hanging out with him for like a couple summers.
And I've never been trapped in a... Have I been... No, I've never been trapped in a building. Or a...
I got to get more creative with my wording of trapped, because I've touched on the thing of me being technically trapped in the middle of winter in Boston, surrounded by skinheads in a house,
Yeah.
having to sleep
'Cause-
with a woman who forced me to sleep with her in a bed because I was wearing a sleeveless shirt and it was
Literally
January.
sleep, not sleep with her.
She
Literally.
wanted me to sleep with her. That
Yeah.
was the whole point.
But like you just slept next to her is what I'm saying.
And then she said
But she
she said if you want to be warm, you got to come lay with me and I use my blanket. And I was like, okay.
I'm either gonna die.
And then I went in there and we were laying in bed and it was completely quiet and I was sitting there looking at the ceiling with my pants on because I was like, I'm not stripping down.
Yeah.
And she goes, we don't have to do anything if you don't want to. And I went,
Did you feel like a victim at that point?
yes. I went, cool. And then she went to sleep and she started farting and snoring. And I was like, great. And then I woke up and she took my clothes in the morning.
Sounds like
So it
Rico.
was kind of trapped. I felt mentally trapped.
It's like Wiko. She farts and snores.
Rico's our dog.
Oh yeah.
What was the other thing?
Thieving bastards that Dan has mentioned.
Oh, Dan had, there's
was
so
that one?
many possibilities for who this could be.
Yeah, because like didn't he talk about someone breaking into his parents' house at one point?
That happened a few times. So
Yeah.
Dan's parents, if you don't know who Dan is my writing partner. We make the comic Steve Lichman, and we did the live stream together, and
He's also the
occasionally do
godfather
Twitch.
to our son,
Yeah,
our wedding
godfather to
officiant.
our kid.
Officiant.
Yeah. So, the thieving bastards are the dudes that broke into his house and stole his like Xbox back when we were kids, and then we were like, oh, that sucks. They stole all your stuff, and then they broke in later on, and then they stole all of his parents' like heirlooms and precious things that have been in the family for centuries, whatever. And then what ended up happening was I don't know if they were selling drugs. They were doing something pretty bad. Their house was repossessed. They were bad people. They did a lot of horrible stuff.
Like the parents were equally as bad as the kids.
Yeah, we had like a handful of families in that area that like sold drugs to little kids and stuff like that.
Right.
So anyway, the end of that story was that Dan ended up buying their property.
Oh, yeah.
And then tore their house down and built his house there.
Yeah.
So he had closure on that. He wasn't he actually wasn't doing it for revenge. It just happened to be that, and he spun it that way because it was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just happened to be that property had been abandoned for so long and nobody was going to buy it.
The last one was the heavy question. So how do you decline respectfully when everything's too much?
Is there more context to it in specific?
Have you gone about respectfully declining work from your clients when your workload is too much or life stuff is getting heavy?
That's kind of easy. I'm very honest with everybody. So I'll just tell them, thanks so much for your offer. Unfortunately, I'm unable to take on the work at the moment, but if in, you figure this out for yourself, X amount of months, you're still interested or you're looking for somebody, feel free to reach out. That's pretty much how I deal with all of them across the board.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you used to do more frequently was if you knew somebody who you thought was a good fit for the job, you would then hand them over.
Oh, yeah.
You would offer somebody else, like say, hey, I'm really sorry that I'm not able to help you, but...
That's a specific case scenario, though. That's one.
That's not every time.
Well, that's if they need it right now.
Yeah.
Then I do that where I'm just like, I couldn't possibly do it, but here's a few people I know who could probably do it. Yeah.
And I think that keeps a obviously good relationship with whoever you're referring, but also with the person who's seeking work.
Yeah.
Because then if they want something in the future, they're like, oh, like you were looking out for me. Basically, you had my back. Even though you weren't able to work with me on this project, you still helped me. Yeah,
you try to maintain your relationships, best you can. I mean, even in terms of like, we've had people reach out. I can't say names or anything, but like we've had people reach out for talks about developing like Steve Lichman into like TV or something, and I'll be like, not super interested in doing that kind of thing. Like I'll kind of politely decline that, but then just be like, oh, but we're always working on stuff, so if you want to hop on a phone call and just talk about whatever, like I'm down.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you're just abandoning a potential relationship completely, but because you can't work together right in the moment on that thing, you can at least get to know somebody new who took an interest in your work and, talk to them about what they want to do, or, maybe just through establishing that relationship and having that base friendship going, or, doesn't need to be friendship, but just that common thing, whatever. Talking to somebody on the phone is a big deal. Like that's one more thread of like connective tissue between you and a client that makes a big difference between you and them and everybody else who's just over email, because you have this actual personal connection where you were on the phone, you were able to make them laugh, or you were able to just talk to them normally and get to know them as a person, ask them about their family, blah, blah, blah.
There's a voice to the name and the face.
Right.
Really,
that gives you a better connection to people as well.
I think, I don't know what the saying is, so I'm not even going to try, but I know that being honest is the best thing for like declining work because it's less to remember.
Honesty is the best policy.
That's not what I was gonna say.
That's why I laugh.
If you're honest and you know it. No, that's not it either, huh?
No,
okay.
that's not it.
Yeah, but just like less to remember, But you don't have to divulge in every detail either, because if it's personal or if life is getting heavy,
No.
That's that's not something that people want to hear.
Only if
necessarily.
It's funny and
yeah.
you know the person or something.
Yeah,
like
you can.
That needs to be personal. It needs to, like, if you're going to be dark and tell them something real that's happening, you only do that in specific scenarios. So like if you're working for somebody for a while and then all of a sudden you're declining them, it's like when that happens, then you have to kind of tell them like, oh, this is like special circumstances. Like when you have an established relationship and you're the person that's kind of their like pinch hitter, where like you can come in and knock something out and they know that they can trust you and you're always there.
Yeah.
And you're dependable. It's like if you're declining the person who knows you from that angle, then sometimes it is worth divulging a little bit of what's serious happening, because then it's like, oh, okay, it really takes a lot for you to be like out.
Yeah, like read your audience though.
Yeah.
Andrea Alessi says, hey Dave and Kim, that name just sounds like a tennis player to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think there is a tennis player with a name very similar to that.
Okay. No wonder.
Yeah.
Hey Dave and Kim, question for both of you about relationships. I hope this isn't too personal, but I would like to hear what are the main things that made the relationship between the two of you to be healthy and engaging. What are the things you would advised to avoid as much as possible to not let things go toxic. Was any of that fundamental for you two to decide to get married with each other? Thanks. Wow. That's a great question. And I don't mind at all. And I know that you are very open. So
yeah, I don't care. I think the number one thing for keeping things healthy is just being honest.
What about engaging?
Engaging?
Yeah. Like we've been together for 8 years now.
I think I still would put honest, like as far as a starting point goes, I would put honesty there.
Yeah, because like
Even
why would we want to
engaging.
engage? Why would we want to engage with each other if I knew you were just going to lie to me or something, or if I was going to lie to you? What's the point?
Like you don't want to engage with somebody that you're not honest with, where like you spend all your time with them, but secretly you have these 10 things that nag you all the time about them that you never talk about.
I think
it becomes harder to be engaged with somebody like that. I feel like a lack of honesty, or at least just it's not, I don't mean honesty in terms of just being like, you do this all the time. Like not that, but just that thing of saying, you know,
honesty,
when
but
this
while
happens, this is like how it feels, whatever.
Yeah, and honesty while still being considerate of the other person.
Right.
I think putting in work is like a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
I think that like 8 years in, and we still think about each other, you know, very fondly. And like in like sometimes the least romantic way of like we've talked about this on our podcast, but like I made you a sandwich because I love you, you know, and I know that you need to eat, and I know that I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you.
Yeah.
Or like those kinds of things. Because like, yes, we used to do way more romantic things or whatever it may have been.
Yeah,
like
before kids.
Yeah, but now it's like fundamental things like I care about you and I want you to know that I care about you. So even if it's like, I don't know. Like, okay, this is kind of silly, but here's a real example that we haven't actually talked about. So this is the first time we're going to talk about it on camera. Like, because we have 2 kids, and I'm still nursing the younger one, Dave has taken over a lot of like the bigger responsibilities with our older son, Axel. So in order to like make it as easy as possible and still be involved, I try to do things like I'll pick out Axel's clothes so that Dave doesn't have to think about it. Or like, and it's like easy, like it's like making it easier for him because I care about Dave too. It's not just about me caring about our son and loving our son. It's like, it's making it easier for you as well because I'm thinking about you and I love you. Or like, you know, things like that. Like I'll make breakfast for Axel by doing like overnight oats because I know that if you're gonna make breakfast for him, all you have to do now is heat it up rather than like wrestle a toddler while trying to make breakfast, you know, like those kinds of things. And it's silly maybe to some people, but I feel like you know,
it's unless you're, you know, whoever you're with doesn't notice those things, then it's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
But if you're with somebody and they notice all the little things that you do for them and ways that you help just make their life easier, then all of those go a long way. And just being, you know, those are the things that are constant, that are like, oh, there's empathy here, love, caring about each other. Like that's a through line all day.
Yeah.
Of
And
what's
there's,
going on.
but it's not, it's effort too. It's like you didn't ask me to do that. I thought about it, and it doesn't change my day or my life whether or not I do it, except for that I took time to do it. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing breakfast with Axel anyway, or if you're getting him dressed in the morning and I don't even see him in the morning because I'm nursing Loic, then what? You know? Then it doesn't really do anything to me. It's like, this is all just for you guys. And so like, it is the effort of like going through those things because I'm thinking about it. And I think that people get really comfortable in relationships, and I think that they don't try anymore. And like you said, honesty, that's one of the things that I see as far as a red flag in other relationships. Like even even people who've been married for a very long time, I hear them complain about each other, and I'm like, well, have you talked to them about it? Like,
Right.
well, they just wouldn't listen.
Well,
But you didn't even talk about it, so how do you know?
yeah, I would say that you have to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations, because they always end up leading to a stronger relationship, because it's things that you're actually feeling. And if you have all of that out in the open and you still love each other, it's like, then you can work through everything, because everybody's they're going to run into all kinds of uncomfortable places in relationships, of being like, whatever, frustrated with something, or feeling like somebody wasn't thinking of you, or whatever, just not considerate. It's like, but you have to voice those things. I think in terms of keeping things healthy, if it weren't for kids, like, we always did stuff together. We always made time to do things, and we would do, random things throughout the year. It wasn't always like, we only celebrate your birthday and we
Or
only celebrate
anniversary.
anniversaries. It would just be little things. It didn't need to be spend a ton of money, but it would be, just if you're thinking about somebody, just get them flowers or something small. It doesn't even have to be flowers. Just pick flowers from outside
Yeah.
and bring them inside and just give them to the person, or make a meal out of the blue, or just take care of something that that is bothering them. And don't even do it when they're not asking for help. And take trips together if you can, like little outings here and there, weekend things, whatever. Just make sure that you don't do the thing where, I know artists do this a lot, where like you get so enveloped in what you do that you forget about kind of everything else. Like, you can get lost in just your own kind of hermit thing, where you're like just living in your room, painting and whatever. It's like, yeah, but not everybody's like that. It's like, you have to kind of break out and just do things and challenge yourself to get out in the sun and make a day of something else that has nothing to do with your hobby. And just kind of,
I would say, without fail, you always ask me how my day was at work, and not just, how was your day? It was like, and like,
engaged and talk.
yeah, and take an interest. And I think that's huge, because you can't put yourself on a pedestal in a sense where, like, I am the most important person and you should only be asking me. Like, you should be putting out into the world what you want back. So like, you take an interest in me, and I'm like, I can recognize how thoughtful that is. And there are certain things that I've learned about art and your business and everything that I never would have known otherwise, and I took an interest in that too. And I genuinely do have an interest in that. Even very little things like music that I never listened to before, I love now because we've listened to it together,
Yeah, we share a lot.
And I think, we're talking a lot about like where we're at now, but like I would like to think that I knew that I wanted to marry you like after our first date.
Yeah, that's true.
And the caveat being, we were able to talk to each other for like almost a month and a half or so, 2 months, like exclusively online before, or like text, whatever, not in person, where there was no physical pressure of like today's dating world, where like we genuinely got to know each other and we were genuinely really good friends. And that was like the foundation, where like we just laughed and joked, and like there was no intentions going into it. And I think that was like, I couldn't have thought of a better situation, because it so easily can go to like, oh, it's our third date, like, are we going back to his place or my place, or like, are we gonna kiss, or like, what's gonna happen? You know what I mean? Like, there was none of that pressure, because we just talked for like 2 months, and like in 2 months, how many dates does somebody usually go on with somebody? You know what I mean?
Yeah, more was back and forth than you'd ever get in dates.
Yeah, in 2 months, I mean like every day, all day, kind of thing. And I think that was like, I think the fact that we could keep talking, and I was still having fun talking to you, and I was looking forward to talking to you, and I still look forward to talking to you. Like, I'm like, I can't wait to tell Dave this whatever thing. I think that's one of those like signs that was like really big for getting married. Just like knowing that, thinking about who I had been with and how incompatible they were compared to how compatible we were. And then like as far as red flags and toxic people, there's just too much to list, honestly. But anything that's the opposite of what we just said.
All I would say is that it's very hard to meet somebody that you get along with as well as, you know, we do. Mm-hmm. So when you find that person, you just kind of go all in, and best of luck to you. I hope that you can find that.
Don't ever be with somebody who thinks that not putting the toothpaste cap back on the toothpaste is not a big deal. That's
probably so many of the dudes that are commenting on this.
Okay, and the next question is from Grundalug. When you first started getting Magic the Gathering jobs, how long on average were you taking to finish an image? How long have your most recent images taken? So, beginning to now.
Okay, so if we're going directly to my old Magic work, I would say a Magic card when I started out probably took me a couple weeks, or like 2 weeks or something, or it took me a long time.
Wow, I'm really surprised by that.
It's because I didn't know what I was doing and I couldn't draw. Mm-hmm. So it was just constantly figuring it out, just trying to get somewhere in the piece. So not like I worked on it constantly. I wasn't as disciplined where I worked. I mean, I had multiple jobs too, because a couple Magic cards wasn't enough to cover everything.
To sustain a living.
Yeah, so I had to do, like, at that time in particular, I was working on probably like 5 or more jobs a month. Jeez. So those would take me like a couple weeks on and off, but a long time. And if I'm working on, well, I mean, like, let's just put that PokeQuest thing, that recent one that I just posted up, that probably took me 3 days.
I was gonna say 4. That was my guess.
Yeah, three days, and that's like a pretty complicated image.
Mm-hmm.
So it's way different now. But yeah, repetition, practice, you'll get there. You know.
How about your most recent Magic card? Something a little bit more like in the same.
I don't know.
Vein.
I don't know. It probably took me like 3 days, 4 days, something like that.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah. Sebastian Posada says, have you ever thought on switching to oils for your personals? Your originals would sell for gazillions of dollars. Gazillions and
I have
zillions.
thought about it because I know that there's so much more money in doing that, but it's just the space, really. Like, if we can move to a house and we have room for a real studio, like the studio here is just a storage closet, pretty much. Like, everything that's extra stuff we just put in here. So I just live in a cluttered mess, you know, just to kind of keep it away from our kids.
Anything that we don't want our like babies to put in their mouths, break, anything,
or stuff that's like too tempting.
Yeah,
like all of that's in here. So as soon as we're in a place where we have devoted space and aerated room or something, like, I would
important.
Yeah, I would
one of those TV rooms.
I would definitely be interested in doing that, but I'm not dying to do it. Like, thankfully, what's been nice is doing the prints coupled with Patreon and whatever work I've had.
Mm-hmm.
That's been, like, more than enough. Like, this is probably our best year ever, like, work-wise. So...
Most stressful year.
Most stressful, but I feel like once we figured it out, schedule-wise, it became manageable. I think the print thing put it to the manageable part.
Yeah.
Where it's like these things can happen, and, you know. I
mean, here we are, 10:30 at night. We're still working. So,
that's true.
You know, it's still a lot, but.
Yeah, but it's a, you know, talking. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's not like we're, paving roads.
No, I'm just complaining because I've been up since 4 in the morning. Baltar BD says, "Hey Dave, new patron here." I don't know why I made him sound like that.
Hey Dave, new patron here.
Sorry, I don't know who you are, so I'm just making up voices for everyone. I love everything in here so far. I don't know why I keep reading it like this. I'm sorry. I've been meaning to ask, how long on average did a Destiny page take you? Some panels are crazy detailed. Haha, thanks. I know you didn't say haha like that, but that's just how I read it.
Kim's not roasting you, but
I'm not. I'm
even
sorry.
Though it comes across that
I'm
way.
so tired right now.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad that you're enjoying the content so far.
I forgot that you did Destiny. You've done so many jobs.
Destiny actually took a long time. Those pages had so much detail in them. It's almost frustrating to think back on that stuff because I'd be so much faster now. If I did that same job, I'd like blow through that job.
Although even then, you were already starting to get faster. So you then was faster than you a year prior.
I would say on average a Destiny page, each page took me probably 2 days.
At least,
So,
start to finish.
Yeah, 2 days a page. And that's way too long for me. Because normally, like if I'm working on Steve Lichman, I can do about 3 to 5 pages a day.
I mean, the difference is that there was like you said, the detail of it, but it was
Yeah.
like technical detail. It wasn't
Yeah, it was
like
like everybody was a Gundam.
yeah, it wasn't like foliage detail where you can like do like scribbles or soft whatever. Like
It was brutal. And I'm very OCD on like detail, as you may already know. So, once,
I know.
once I had to do it, I was like, these have to be exact.
Yeah.
So I followed the models and I like really did it every
Yeah.
page, and it was terrible. So yeah, that's how long it took.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next question comes from Ahmed Al-Krish. Hey Dave, how do you get jobs based on you or your style instead of being brought on to imitate or draw in that studio/client style? Meaning get hired for you, not for anyone else's style. And Timothy Kong also says, great question. I'm curious about this too.
I think it's through a repetition, constantly putting out work, having there just be a continual presence of you on the internet. This is going to sound stupid, I guess, but it's like jumping on all the trends and things and waiting for stuff to come out. Oh, there's Zelda news. What Zelda art do I have? I should post that on Twitter and Instagram again, even if I already posted it. And then just always being on top of those things. And then continually exploring your style, constantly challenging yourself and becoming a better artist as much as you can. And over time, you'll develop enough of a name. Like, I was brought on to be other people before. I've been brought on to be like, oh, we want a this person type artist.
But we can't afford them?
Yeah,
Is that what it
can
is?
you fill this role? And then I would do that. But I'm 15, 16 years into my career, so it's like, it's a long time. Like that's
So wild.
that's a long time to be working. So naturally, over time, you start to become more of a thing just because people get to know you, especially since I never took a studio job, so I never vanished. I never went to game studio here and just became a concept artist and stopped freelancing. I was always freelancing, so social media was always a big part of what I did. That's why I think across social media now, it's not like a crazy number compared to some of the more prolific artists I know, but like 500,000 plus people follow. So it's like those, I would say the one time where those numbers mean anything is when popular places who make things, and I mean popular as in like, I don't know, let's say like print companies that rely on names and reach. So they're like, oh, if I hire this person, they have enough of a base of people that follow them where we'll be able to sell out of this print, and then we'll pay them X amount of money to get it made.
Are you an influencer?
I mean, that's the worst thing ever, but you could technically put it in those words for art.
Yeah.
Like, I would never call myself that because I'd rather die. But it is true that people will target people with an audience if their plan is to sell merchandise.
Yeah, they want to scoop up your audience too.
Right. But then if you just have a style, I'm saying that the audience comes from you being a person that people want to look at naturally. That will happen.
I think you really saw that.
You can trick your way there, but...
Well, when you switched from your hyperrealism to more of your comic style, and eventually you got pushback obviously, but eventually you started getting jobs for it. I think other people were like, oh, you did that for someone else. I thought that was just your own style of thing. I didn't realize that it could be applied in this way. You started getting more jobs for it. And even just having one job of this style being applied was a really, it opened so many doors for you in that way of being other people's light bulbs went off and going oh, I didn't know that you did that for other people. I didn't know I could hire you to do that. So that definitely helps.
That's actually a huge part of it, where I will say even this year, like I said, 15 years into my career, I had a company reach out to me. They wanted me to do artwork specifically tailored in the style of something that I had worked on previously. And then they saw some of my concept art portfolio that was on my website, which is just a whole different section of my website. And they were like, oh, I didn't know he could do concept art. And I'm sitting, it's a really dangerous place to be if you're an artist with an ego. I don't consider myself to have a huge ego. It's
you don't.
But even then, it's you have to have a lot of empathy, because you have to be able to look at yourself and see what other people see when they're just fresh to your work. So I was almost naively under the impression that you know that I could design stuff. Why wouldn't you know that I could design? You
hired me for my website. How did you not see this other part of my website where I do this thing?
Not even that. I just would think you should be able to tell from what you do that you could do that too. But it's not that. You have to be very literal. You have to be here is the things I do. Here's concept art. Here's illustration. Here's blah, blah, blah. You have to put it all out there and be I do these. Tell people I do these. And then they'll hire you for them. But I've had companies reach out and be I didn't even know you did that. I thought you were just an illustrator. That's kind of the problem with doing so many different things, is people who only see you do one of those. They think that's all you do. And so you don't get hired to do the other things that you do.
Yeah.
So I've had people who only know me from Steve Lichman, and they'll be I didn't even know you painted.
Yeah.
And they'll be you paint realistic paintings. What is this? I thought you just did comics. And I'm no, this is most of what I do is painting.
And then you have those people who are really, really into your magic cards.
Right.
And then they come by a booth, and one day they're going to just see Garfield hentai, and they're going to be whose booth is this?
I mean, there's a huge percentage of people who only follow me for the Garfield hentai, and they were I followed you for cat porn, and they're but I like this too.
Yeah.
And I was oh, thank you. I mean, most people are do more Garfield hentai.
Yeah.
Which I understand completely, because if you want to sell stuff, making jokes and memes is number one.
Yeah. I think that it's the analogy. I'm always full of analogies because I'm not in this world, so I always try to put it in terms that a plain person like myself, who is not in art, would understand it.
Very analogous.
Yes. You don't go to Starbucks and order a large. You go to Starbucks and order a, I don't know, venti, whatever. See, I don't even know. But the people who taking your order can't assume that you know those things about it, because so many people go through the line and they go every single day and they know what it is. And it's the same way you can't assume that everyone knows what you're capable of and what your role is in that world. Like, you kind of just have to put it out there and be empathetic and be sensitive to those people in the way of like, oh, let me just show you what I do. Let me just put it out there.
Yeah, but most people don't even, like, the funny thing about that is you'll be wondering why you aren't. And I brought it up mainly to say that the ego thing is dangerous because a lot of artists will just wonder, how come I don't get work? And
Or how come I don't get work for this?
but what happens is clients don't email you when they don't hire you and be like, this is why we didn't hire you.
Yeah.
So you just have to figure that out.
You're not applying for a job and saying,
Yeah, you don't get a
unfortunately,
rejection.
yeah, we're not going to hire you because...
Yeah, like you have to actively think through, you know, what people could see in you. But anyway, yeah, you just need to put in the time and effort and constantly work on yourself, put yourself out all the time, and then eventually people will hire you for you, just because style comes naturally if you're just pursuing what you love, and you might not see it, but other people see it. I didn't know I had one until other people said I had a look. That's it.
Next question comes from Mikkel Mako. Hey Dave, I'm about to start studying anatomy hardcorely by investing a lot of time that I wish to be used efficiently using the right mindset. My current planned approach is to simplify, isolate piece of body part, gathering references in 2D or 3D forms, organize them, which will become the basis for thinking, studying, analyzing through shape and form mindset predominantly. But still, I'm wondering what is the rightest mindset I should go with. Sorry, I almost skipped a line. That would be efficient in extraction of the most usefulness, mainly to extract, inject, retain, recall, and rebuild from imagination. Was you developing in your lifetime period in isolation mode your form skills only? Would that unlock and increase proficiency to build, modify, see, feel, form, and afterwards that would be used as primary skill, tool, mindset behind to study / analyze, practice?
Dang, that's a lot of lists.
Yeah. Specific subject to extract, inject, retain, recall, and rebuild from imagination. If you practice your form skill, how much of it is needed, or how much you did emphasize this area, and are you still doing so nowadays? Lastly, was you learning anatomy from inside out, meaning you would draw the bones first, then the muscles, using origin and insertions over a wide range of custom bone poses, and lastly, doing fully skinned supported from the...
Fully skinned.
I'm not laughing at this question. I'm laughing because I feel like I sound like an idiot reading this. Supported from the practice knowledge of underlying. Because I'm also trying to think of how you're answering it. But it's a lot of questions in one. But really, like, they're telling you that they're going to study.
Well,
And how do you extract your studies into, like, being mindful? Like, he's saying, like, the injecting and retaining and recalling. So, like, to build your imagination, like, how are you taking those studies and applying it, really?
I think the best people who do that, they try to not only study it directly, but visualize a lot of it in their head before drawing it, and then draw very deliberate lines for how they think that those forms actually read, and they build that muscle up. I know that Ian McKegg does that, and Marko Djurdjevic does that, and I would assume that Kim Jung-ji does that. But yeah, I think that number one, everybody's different. So is there a general thing that you could do? Probably. But I never really followed anything that was written down as like steps of how to study anatomy. I didn't know. I just kind of did what I thought made sense, and I kind of winged it, but I was informed, but I still winged it. I saw what a lot of people were doing, and I kind of just assumed that they were copying a lot from books. And I never thought that that was useful because it felt very one-sided. Like, I found myself very easily getting lazy with that and just copying and not thinking. And that was the major problem. So the thing that I did, which I've parroted on here a few times, is just copy from the reference and then close the reference and draw that same thing again from your imagination. And you could also do that where you just draw the same thing from reference like a few times just to cement it in your mind. I mean, really, what are you trying to do? You're trying to memorize the thing, right? Some people are going to be better at that than others, especially when it comes to like visuals and whatever. Like, some people have photographic memories, and then it's just a matter of having a steady hand and knowing how to draw. It's like, and then you can recall those things. But like,
and then repetition, of course, like we've been saying.
Yeah, I mean,
just to be able to like retain that, the practice and the studies, right?
Right, but I think it's the same. If I were to put it in a different way, I think what I'm kind of talking about is almost how you use language, where you could tell me this is how you say something in Spanish over and over again, and I would just repeat it from you. But it's a whole different thing if I'm just in a conversation or something over time and like having, you know, like thrown into it, like living in the country and like
having to use
just talking, and rather than just being like, I'm just copying you, I'm just mimicking you.
Well, then there
it's
needs
like
to
having
be
to actually interpret like how somebody's trying to convey something.
There needs to be a purpose of use. So like,
right,
all of the practice and everything won't do you any good unless there is purpose.
Right.
So like,
that's the doing it from imagination.
And the purpose of doing it from imagination may even be like a job. You got hired for it. Now it's time. Now it's time to put that to use, you know?
Well, I would say what I did was I would do the study from the thing a bunch of times. I would close the thing, draw it from my imagination, compare the two, see what I got wrong, make a mental note of that, and then, you know, continue from there the next day. And what I would use that study for later on in the day, in whatever imaginative work I was doing, I would apply what I learned and just kind of work it into the piece. And the same thing where you're trying to eliminate laziness from studies. So if you know that today you want to draw somebody riding on an eagle, you know what I mean? It's like, why would you study a tank that day? You know what I mean? It's like, study an eagle. Do an actual painting or drawing of an eagle and then do it later in your piece.
So like drawing from imagination, drawing people's faces, like like you've drawn a very similar looking, not the same girl, but like a very similar looking girl, or like a very similar looking guy, but like in different, you know, areas. And that's because, you know, you are drawing from imagination. You're not trying to draw someone. You're trying to draw like from your imagination of like what you think this person should look like, or, you know, where does that come from? Do you feel like you've like, do you think that you take something that like is so familiar, like a face, and you've just like put all the things that you like into it, and like this is what you either have seen maybe like once before and it's stuck with you, or like it's what you think a face should look like? How do you...
I think that the female one is hard because I don't know, because I don't try to do that, but I've had like I've worked on like the Metal Gear thing they did, and so many people are like, oh, you use Scarlett Johansson for reference, and I'm like, no. Like, I just did it from my head.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't reference anybody, and I didn't even mean it to look like her, and I don't feel like I fall into that too often, like specifically. In terms of like face shape, things can generally be the same. I tried to navigate around that by using some reference just to reinforce just like another approach, and be like, oh, don't fall into your lazy habit. But I think like with dudes in specific,
they're not exactly the same, but they're like
Yeah, they look
they all
the
look
same.
yeah, like they all could be like brothers.
Yeah, I think you do. I think I probably do like a mix of like my family. So I'll draw
Like the faces you know really well.
Yeah, like you'll draw like you mixed with like your brother or whatever or something like that. So I
Oh,
think,
not me and my brother.
no, but I think it's something like that where it's just familiarity. It's kind of what you lean on, and it's also what you're used to seeing. So if I'm doing a specific kind of anime style or something, I'll lean on what I liked most about certain shows or something like that.
Okay.
And that'll be kind of where my mind goes automatically, I guess. But it is lazy, and you should try not to. And I always thought it was funny, other artists would be like, the critique you'd see from people to artists a lot of times would be like, you keep drawing yourself as these characters.
That's funny.
And they'd be like, no, I don't. And you'd be like, well, it's not that crazy. You see yourself in the mirror every day.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't the faces that you draw from your head
Have similarities.
be familiar
Yeah, that
in the
makes
sense
sense.
where like, yeah, you're borrowing from the thing you know best, which is you.
Max replied to the question and said, "Hey, Mikal, may I can tell you my 2 cents. I'm just reading it how it's written. May I can tell you about." I can't. I'm not. I'm so tired. I'm sorry.
I just fix the sentences while I read them.
2 cents about learning anatomy. Take the energy and effort. It's just, I'm such a literal person. That's why I'm just reading it. Take the energy and effort you took to write these questions and just draw the hell out of you.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was saying, was that there's no. I would say the wrong way to study anatomy is to not study anatomy.
Yeah.
And the right way is to do it and figure your way through it. And don't be lazy. Always challenge yourself.
My experience about learning anatomy is just draw what you like and put the exercise in your drawing. So you draw a fantasy character or a creature, then hardly focus on anatomy or on special parts of anatomy you want to learn. Hope you know what I mean. Cheers, keep on drawing. And then Alfred Manzano said, I did the same thing, Max. Totally worked for me. So there you go. Next question comes from Sena Prahara. Hey Dave and Kim, I have a question about the travels adventure you guys did over the years. What was the general experience when you traveled to Bali some years ago? What are the things that you hate about Bali? /hate. I hope you guys had a local there to show you around. I hope you didn't get scammed. People are generally nice there, but some of them needed that extra scam money to survive. Last one, which country do you guys like to visit next time as a family with them Raposa boys in the future when traveling protocol is easier? Blessings to you and your beautiful family. Thanks guys, take care.
Oh, thank you. I really like Bali. I think the positives were a lot. I mean, it's a beautiful place. Everybody's generally pretty kind, and it's very open. I feel like
Food
free.
was amazing.
Yeah, the food was really good.
I loved all the different
artisan
crafts.
things.
Yeah, like the wood. Obviously, we have the door from the masks. But we even saw the stones. And I know there's so many more that we obviously didn't even get to touch.
Yeah, we didn't really get scammed. I mean, I knew that, when you have a guide there, that they're taking you to places that they have deals with to take commission from. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with that.
But they should, because
they're bringing business. It's if that's how you survive, then that's fine. I don't consider that kind of thing.
Yeah, our guide was amazing too, because he also coordinated our door, making it to us.
Yeah, he shipped it,
everything. He makes sure the wired money, and he also would go check on the design for us too.
Yeah, take pictures and send them back over.
Yeah.
His name is Kadek Radiasa.
And he also still comments on the boys' pictures, which is very sweet. He's a very sweet person, and he came and hung out with us and everything.
Yeah, we really
had a lot
enjoyed
of fun.
It was a lot of fun, just hanging out, being in a new place.
Somewhere different climate too, tropical, which was really cool, and
yeah.
seeing those monkeys.
I mean, of course, it's like coming from a tourist perspective, though. I mean, like it's not like we're going and hanging out with people who just live there all the
Right.
time and talking to them. And I mean, like a little bit of that, but most of the time was spent around the facility where we were teaching at, and just around the hotel and then around the restaurants in that area. So not a ton of downtime to go out and do other things. So yeah, there wasn't a ton of time to like experience how everybody lives there.
I mean, I don't think I hated anything about Bali, but I did think that it was like I think I was just shocked that there was like such a disparity between like, we'd be walking into like a 5-star hotel that was, everyone spoke English and everything was like very touristy and everything. And then we'd go around the corner and there was like a building that was just collapsed in, dogs walking around, and there was like fires on the street, and like,
Yeah.
it was like shocking because of where we live
It
and
was
come
just the
from.
contrast.
Yeah, and obviously that might just be normal for what's over there, but like, I think I was just like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, you know?
I thought it was pretty wild how regular it is over there for people to be smoking. Like really,
Yeah.
really young kids smoke there, which is like, it's like a throwback. Like it's not like that never happened here. Like,
But it was more open.
yeah, it was just accepted, which was funny.
Like no adults were like,
No, it wasn't a secret. They weren't
give
getting
me
away
that.
with something.
Where'd you get that? Yeah. And then, I mean, there's a lot of places. I want to go to,
I mean, we want to go to Japan.
yeah, definitely. But I wanted to go to also like, I mean, just kind of around Europe in general, because there's so many places that I haven't been to. Like you and Dan went to London, and I've never been. I mean, England as a whole, like I'm sure there's like the countryside too that would be beautiful, not just like the city stuff. And then if we go to Japan, definitely like want to hit up Vietnam too, because shout out to my mom.
Yeah, she never wants to go back to Vietnam after they escaped.
Yeah.
We've like talked to her about that, like, would you ever want to go visit? And she's like, absolutely not.
I mean, she doesn't like flying, but also like the way they left was like, you
Extremely traumatic.
well, yes, war, obviously, and she was very young, and it was just her siblings and her mom, and there's at that point 8 of them. The 9th one was born in Colorado Springs, but like, yeah, you remember all these like terrible things, but also then you're like flying forever, because that's not an easy trip. Like it was hard just us two flying to like Bali, like just because
to go to Bali
it was like
37 hours.
37 hours. Yeah, it was a long flight. Like I can't imagine doing that in something that's like not comfortable, or you're sitting on the floor of a plane,
I also just stayed awake for 37 hours. I never went to sleep on those, I don't think. I think actually I did go to sleep the first time I went to Bali. I fell asleep on the part where I transferred from Singapore. I slept on that flight because it was just incredibly comfortable. The Singapore Airlines, whatever that is.
I think you slept a little bit.
It was fancy. Well, I slept in Japan. I slept on a bench.
Oh yeah, that was like when I didn't go with you.
No, I slept on a bench in Japan. And I just kept my stuff close to me because I was just stuck in Japan for a while because I was sick. I got bit by a tick, and I thought I had Lyme disease because I had like the red mark on my arm or whatever. And I just wandered around and tried to go to, I was at the Narita airport, and I tried to go into town to get some antibiotics for it. And I talked to the lady, and she was like, well, you just get on this train here, and then, that'll take you to the next town over, and you can go to the pharmacy and whatever. And it was like super early in the morning. I'm pretty sure it was probably like 4 a.m. their time, where people were like just starting to go to work, kind of. And I got on the bullet train to Tokyo. I was like, well, this isn't the next town over.
You were on it for
an hour.
It was like an
Or
hour and a
something.
half because I think it was round trip 3 hours.
Yeah, I went an hour and a half, and then I was talking to like this dude came to check my ticket, and I was like, I was supposed to go one town. I was
Yeah.
like, where are we going?
You're trying to go
And
to the
he was like,
doctors.
this goes to Tokyo, and I was like, cool.
That's not what I was
I was
trying
like,
to do.
can I just? Do I have to buy another ticket? Can I just go back? He was really nice. He was just like, yeah, you can just go back.
Yeah.
So there was like one stop between there and Tokyo, I think, and I like went back and got on it, and then I was just in this town after a long time. I was just sitting in this town waiting for the pharmacy to open.
And it was
And
like
it was like this town that was just empty, and I was sitting there I was watching the sun come up, and just like little kids were like running around. Like, this is a nice town, and then it turns out it was a holiday, and I was
yeah, because it was like, it was not a weekend. I remember it was
No.
like a Monday or Tuesday or something
Yeah.
where you're like,
It wasn't a weekend. I mean, it's not like they're Christian or something and they're gonna take Sundays off, but like, or whatever they do. I actually don't know, but yeah, it was like just some random holiday, and I was just sitting there like, well, I guess if I'm sick, I'm sick. And I was like, I'm just gonna go the rest of the way to Indonesia. Yeah, it was funny.
I definitely want to go to, well, specifically because my birthday's in January, I want to go to like New Zealand or Australia or both, because if you're already over there,
Yeah, live in the summer.
yeah, I want to have a summer birthday. I want to experience it just
Yeah.
sometime, That's on my list. Portugal, I want to take you.
But with kids, those places are places that, like, if you go, you
We're
better
going
have
for a
enough-
month.
Yeah, it's like you better have enough money to go for like a month.
Because I'm not putting us through that
No.
if they're not, yeah.
No.
But yeah, Portugal would be also really fun too, because I want to like,
Yeah.
see all the things that like
It's too bad we couldn't go to
what your
my whole family's from.
yeah, the
Which
Azores.
is like, I never knew that the Azores were like super far from Portugal. I guess like all of my like whatever it is of my percentage of,
Like your descendants.
of my descendant. Yeah, it's like I'm a lot Portuguese, and
Yeah,
everybody.
That was the funny thing too. When your sister did it, you were over 50%. It was like 54% or something like that,
But
which doesn't make
everybody
sense.
who had my last name is from the Azores, and I was like, why there's probably some historical reason for it that I
Yeah.
don't know about, but yeah, I was like, that's real. It's like in the middle of the ocean.
Tiny. Yeah. So I hope that answers that question. Isaiah says, I just thought of that. So yeah. Isaiah Zachary says, what separates a high level artist from an average one? And do you think it's possible to become a high level artist whilst maintaining your health and having a somewhat normal social life?
No,
Yeah.
I would say no. I think you would say that about anything. I think you'd say that about professional athletes. Like, do you really think that they're out doing a whole bunch of things? It's like, no, they're training almost constantly. It's
Becoming a doctor.
right. Anything that's a high level of whatever, it's going to be a person who's super dedicated to that thing. And yeah, you can't maintain a normal social life. You have to have, but I think people who are into those things, it's like that's what they love doing. So it's not a huge sacrifice in that way. It's not like, oh my God, like I'm wasting my life. Like they don't think about it like that. Like anybody who does anything at a high level is dedicated to something because they love it. So, if you didn't love it, you wouldn't stick with it like that. Like, it doesn't mean it's not hard, but I mean that you're interested enough in becoming something that sacrifice is worth it for those people. So I don't think that you can have a normal social life. Like, it's not impossible to be successful and have a normal social life. But if you're talking about like the highest level profession, whatever, it's like, of course,
And that's more of like the road to there. You can't maintain it. But like once you're there,
I think once you're there, though, to maintain it, you still have to be that kind of person. You can be like, oh, I got here, now I'm going to take it easy.
I think you can get there and then start to find a balance once it becomes a little bit more normal. once you've been doing it for like a little while, where you're like, okay, the stress isn't as high because I'm not like fighting like to get there. You know what I mean? Like you're not.
It's kind of. I think that it's a thing of like, once you find the baseline of what you have to do in order to maintain that, if you can increase your speed in your output and still have that regularity, then yes, then you can start to find balance. But that just is because you're getting better, and because you're like buying yourself time by improving and becoming faster.
Yeah.
It's like, and once you can do that enough, then yes, like you can start to have that balance of like a regular life and the thing. But I think that if you wanted to be like I don't consider myself some like super high level artist. Like there are people way above me. There's tons of people that are way above me. It's like those people, like I don't think they ever get there. I don't think anybody stops and is like, oh, now I'll stop. It's like that's not the kind of person who gets to that level.
Yeah.
So yeah, what was the other part? What's the difference between them?
Yeah, a high level and an average one.
I think from the outset, it's like a confidence thing to me. Like in my opinion, I think that like the difference between those people is like the level of insecurity. And it's like if you have insecurities and you let it crush you, or if you have insecurities and you want to overcome them and like, you know, grow and whatever and push yourself. It's like, I feel like they're two different outlooks, and you can beat yourself down and keep yourself at a low place and just be like, okay, whatever, like I don't deserve anything more than this. I don't, you know, want to pursue anything more than this or whatever. Like I think that you can get to that place, but yeah, I feel like the general artist is just, you know, it's like you can survive and make a living and have a good career, but I think that the difference is some people are just, they like, I don't know if they believe in themselves more or something, but it's just that they have like some different drive to them that puts them in a different place. I don't know. There's so much to it. It's hard to kind of pinpoint any one thing.
We've kind of talked about success in that way, like that it's that mixture of confidence and like just enough knowledge, because like if you know too much, you start to like think of everything that could go wrong, so you kind of have to be a little bit oblivious too, like to take the risk.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's, you can trick yourself though. Like you can get like you, like that's the starting point is what you're talking about. It's like that thing of it's the person, and everybody has this person in their life. It's like, you know, somebody who's supremely talented, like as far as a beginner goes in a field, you're like, oh, this is the funniest person I know. You should do comedy. Oh, you're the best artist in this whole school, whatever. You should like become a professional, do this thing. Like anything like that. People who are really, really good and then really smart, they find every way that they're going to fail. And then it's so easy to talk yourself out of doing that thing because it just seems stupid and too risky.
Yeah.
And it's like,
they think of like all the possibilities and all the outcomes.
Yeah, but if you know why things succeed, because number one, there is such a low bar for stuff in all reality. It's like, look at like some of the shows that get made that are on TV. It's like, do you think that that's the highest possibility for, you know, achievement in humans? It's like, probably not, but it's on
that we
TV.
saw the other day.
Yeah, it's like there's all kinds of things that exist in the world that suck. There's bad comics. There's terrible movies. There's terrible everything. Bad songs, bad art. It's like, and people, it's like you have to put yourself in the mindset of almost like a rapper, where you have to be like, fuck everybody. I'm just going to
get money,
do it and be whatever. It's like, just be stupid. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, fuck you. Like, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And if you don't like it, whatever. It's like, who gives a shit? Like that doesn't, like you have to have that kind of ego to you and not care.
Even if you have to fake that. I mean,
Yeah. But it's not being worried about failing. It's like always putting out stuff and just being like, if nobody likes this, I did it because I liked it. And I did it because it was just something for me. And it's like, and whatever. If nothing ever comes of this, I still did it because I wanted to. And that, in all reality, is the only way to get somewhere and do something worthwhile, is just to follow what you love to do and trust your own instincts. And that's how you make new things that are good, and you know how you stay relevant even. So I think that, yeah, that's kind of, I mean, I'd probably say like that's one of the biggest ones is knowing that that's how people self-sabotage so that you don't do it. And just being like, yes, all of these things could go wrong, but what do dumb people do that sell, you know, like that old meme of like ShamWow. It's like when it's like that's such, it's a cloth that you wipe up stains with. You tell somebody really smart that that's what you're going to sell and be like, but what is it? They'll find every reason why that's stupid, and then you just give it to a charismatic person to sell, or somebody that's funny enough to like meme, and then it blows up and you sell ShamWows. It doesn't matter.
When I was going through nursing school, I remember like it being really hard and like it was challenging at times, and then meeting you want some like during clinicals, meeting nurses and being like, oh, you got through nursing school? I could do it. Like, but really though, I mean, there are some nurses out there that I was like, whew, like I'm in my first semester and I'm teaching you stuff.
Yeah.
That's not good. Like, okay, I'll be okay. I'll be fine.
Right.
And then eventually you get practice and then you feel more confident and stuff. But yeah, same thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, parroting something I've said before, but I think talking to artists that you admire, people that you think are great, talking to them and making them real, making them normal human beings will kind of change your mind on that. Because everybody has insecurities.
Yeah.
Everybody has doubt. Everybody has all of those reasons why they couldn't become great at something. The reason people just get past that is because they just do it anyway. And then, you know, don't even think about it. Like, and then you have people who won't like, and this is deviating from the question, but it opens up something else. Where like I had people tell me like when I started doing comics, like, oh, like people that I felt were not incorrect, but also they were projecting their own fear onto me. They would tell me to stop doing things that were just things that weren't already in my wheelhouse of things that people knew me for. And it was more like friends kind of, or, you know, I understood it though. I understood that they were like kind of like, why would you just abandon doing like realistic painting? That's like your whole career.
Yeah, good intentions. Just,
right, but fear-based.
Yes.
So, I mean, I have a kind of gut reaction to like fear-based advice where I just get angry about it and I'm like, shut up. Like, I
like,
can't.
I'll show you.
Like, it just makes me angry when like people are scared of stuff, where I'm like, be strong. Like, you can get through it. Like, that's kind of how I always want to deal with it.
Which honestly is just like ingrained in you, because
Yeah.
I see it in Axel. Like, if I freak out about something, he'll go, and then just do it, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, oh, you're scared? Like, now I really want to do it.
But I had that about, you know, like writing comics is what I was saying. Like, I had people say, oh, it's bad. Like, that's bad writing.
They said that to you?
Yeah. And like,
Who said that?
I don't remember, but I remember reading it. I mean, you only, like, again, it's not like this is the end all be all comment thing. Like, everybody said this. It's like a handful of people said it. You only think of negative comments when you remember those things. It's like, so I'm sure it wasn't a lot of people, but I knew it was bad and I was doing it anyway. Like, I knew I couldn't write. I was just writing. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And it's, that is again like the difference. It's like a confidence thing. It's like a false confidence thing too. I'm lying to myself of being like, this is good enough for you to look at. Here, I know it's not good enough, but who gives a shit? Look at it. If you like it, you like it. And enough people will like those things. It's like, it's not, you have to get a reality check and read a comic that isn't the number 1 comic. Read the number 3 comic. And you'll be like, oh, it's actually not incredible. Like the writing in this isn't something that you couldn't maybe do.
Right.
And then that gives you a little bit of confidence. Or even just a comic that sells okay. Like just look at it and be like, oh, that's not that incredible. Same thing with books and everything else. It's like, so putting those kind of comments in perspective that could potentially sink your ship when you're like trying to do something was a big kind of like eye-opening thing for me, because you would see those things, you would believe it in yourself, but then you'd also see all the people that were still supportive. Whether or not they're just kissing your ass because they just want to say a nice thing is another story. That could be the case. It could be eventually that somebody needs to shake you and be like, hey, stupid. You know, people only like you because you have a following on the internet, and they'll support whatever you do, even if it blows ass. It's like, that could always be the case. It's when you get it in front of strangers who don't know you at all that you get, you know, that actual feedback. And as soon as those things were in front of people that had no idea who I was and they still liked it, it was like, oh, okay. Don't listen to people that are just going to tear you down.
Yeah.
And yeah, the more of those hurdles you can get over, I feel like the closer you get to becoming whatever you think a great artist, you know, is or could be. We're looking at our son.
Sorry, yeah, I keep
woke
looking
up and
over.
was yelling.
Yeah, he's just screaming right now. Cryogen says, how do you make connections within the industry without going to art school? I'm looking to be a concept artist, and it seems like the best thing you can do to get a job is know people.
Yeah, I definitely think in the beginning that's probably true. The best thing is that, I mean, the best thing is to just be great at what you do. Just be good. It's like, that's the best thing, is to be a talented artist who has a vision, and that vision is something that people want. It's like, that's number 1. That's what you would want. Then people hire you for everything. You know, like I know so many artists that are working professionals that, like, you know, like Wes Burt, he gets hired for so much stuff. Like, he's just like a Marvel person now, working on every movie, every show. Like, he gets hired over and over for his great ideas and designs and his draftsmanship. Incredible. So that's number 1. I would say the best thing.
Be good.
It is true. I mean, like, it is like, you know, like, how do you get hired over and over again to be a plumber?
Yeah.
It's like, it's word of mouth. It's like, how good are you at what you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's the same thing applies with art. The easiest way to get in without doing years of work is definitely to know people, because then you can have a leg in and start to, you know, and then you can grow within the company and just become a better artist over time and have that safety net of the income from the job, which is great, because becoming a freelancer who's starting out doing, you know, somebody's original idea, like I said, of the naked girl that's half kangaroo, which I've had to do because that's the only jobs people. What do you think? Top half.
Top half is a girl.
Otherwise, it's not identifiable as a kangaroo, is it?
It just looked like a rodent with you.
I think the clear defining piece of a kangaroo is the legs and the tail.
Yeah, I guess it depends on, like,
pouch.
I guess if you just did, like, the pouch, I don't know, I guess you could have done a human hybrid with a pouch.
It would just be a rat with a fanny pack at that point. But, yeah, so that's what you get hired for if you don't start out in some kind of position in, like, a concept art place and you're just a freelancer.
Yeah.
So if you want to avoid all those, then yes, making some friends, getting involved in the industry that way, it's a much smoother ride for sure.
Next question comes.
How do you do that? Was that part of it?
Like, how do you make connections?
I would say
Without
Discord groups now are like one of the ones that I'm noticing. There's like everybody's, and it's like through Twitter also. Instagram is a little less personal, I think, unless you're like DMing artists and figuring out where they normally talk and hang out.
But like even now, school is so much online with like all the COVID stuff, you know?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Like a lot of people.
I mean, I think Discord. I think like things like Discord, if it's not Discord, where everybody's hanging out, I think it is Discord. That's like really where everybody is. That's what I've noticed. Like I've been invited to join multiple artist groups. I don't understand Discord as far as like how you even are productive in a day while Discord is there. I don't understand it as far as like working people like using it. It's really hard for me. Like it'd be like having AOL Instant Messenger on all the time. It's like I don't get it.
It's how I would describe it is probably like
I mean, I know you can talk. But
yeah, but it's like how like the kids today use FaceTime. Like they don't look at each other on it. They just have it. It's like having your friend in the room with you so that if you want to show them something, you can. It's just like the accessibility. Like, oh, I just want to show you this thing. And so like you're right here. But we're not like if you're hanging out with your friend and you're like a teenager, you're not just constantly talking.
Right.
And I think that's carried over into like the computer or like your phone, you know?
And I think it's a lot like the forum days too. Where like I remember I wasted too much time in forums is really what I'm getting at. And so like the idea of getting into a Discord and actively participating in a major way on like art groups.
But it's more of like
really hard.
A casual thing where you just go like here's my thing, and then you wait for a text back kind of thing, you know? I don't know. That's how I see it.
I understand it, but it'd be hard to get things done if you use it all the time.
Oh yeah. Well, and also I don't think you like being that accessible anyway.
Oh no.
In that kind of way.
I don't even want a phone.
I know. Adrian Hernandez says, hello, Dave and Kim. Loving what you are doing with everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My question is, in relation with your compositions, I really love those compositional posters, kind of old school, with a lot of baddies and the protagonist being very intense. Where do you start? With a figure in your head, like a triangle composition? Or do you make a list with every character, or just start sketching every character and you follow the mood and then put them together? That's a good question.
I never do the last one that you said. I always do shapes, and I try to think of readability. Like I think that the Bloodborne poster is kind of messy in the sense of readability. I tried to keep it readable in the way that there's just not so many characters on it, but I feel that they all live in a similar color space, so it doesn't achieve its goal in the same way that, like, I don't know, classic movie posters would do it. Like, you have to really break down everything into shapes, because what you're looking at first is something that's like one mass, and then you kind of perceive detail on detail on detail from that. But unless your eyes have something to kind of like focus on, settle on, then you're gonna go everywhere in the poster, and you don't want to do that. So as long as there's a certain amount of shapes within the poster, you're pretty good. And then you want to think of composition, like, how do I move the eye around? How do I not, you don't want tangents that lead off the poster in weird ways. You want everything to stay within the poster, and then also lead the eye around to all of the things that you want them to look at. So you want to create little like trails through it and keep the eye moving through contrast. And
do you call those happy
contrast.
Trails?
I do call them happy trails because they make people really, pleased to look at the piece. And I try to think about that a lot when I'm working on pieces, but in complicated big pieces, I try to separate everything into smaller chunks. Because if everything that's super detailed in those tiny monsters and stuff, if that's all kind of like mashed together, you don't see them. So you have to separate them somehow, and you do that by readability.
What about with like your Metal Gear Solid? Why do I always stumble over that word? Metal Gear Solid. You obviously couldn't have made a list of every character because some of them are nameless characters. They're just like a scene or something like that, right? Like, do you know?
I do have a list.
You do? Okay, so you know exactly what's going to go into it. So then what about like as far as the protagonist being very intense, do you always focus on like, do you know which one is going to be like the main character that draws your eye in first? Do you know which one? Is that usually like the one that you want to draw the most, or is that the one that is like just the main character? These are my questions.
Both. I want other people to like it, so I put my own thing into it, but then I also do the thing that everybody else wants to.
Okay.
So I try to think of both.
Like crowd favorite kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So that's kind of what's like on the Metal Gear one. Like I have Snake, and then I also have Gray, Ninja. So he's like sitting there.
I don't know their name.
Fox.
Oh, okay.
So he's sitting there with him. So I put them there because I have to put Snake. It's like, but all I want is to draw the ninja.
Okay, I get it.
And same thing goes for like some of the other elements. Like the helicopter on that one, for instance. It's not like the helicopter kind of is a big part of the game, but you don't see a whole lot of it, and it's not like crazy dramatic. I don't know. I wanted to do like old school action poster type of deal, so I'll like dramatize those things just because I want it to be there and make it like a little crazier than it actually is. So like those types of things I'll like heighten it, and then I just kind of include. I mean, I'm terrible. So like I do every character. Like I did like every possible. I think every design from Metal Gear Solid is on that poster.
Yeah.
So I do that a lot. I just include everything.
Yeah. As much as you can.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Frederick H says, "Hello, Raposa Gang. Thanks for answering my questions in the last Q&A. Hope all is well. I have a question regarding the comics industry. One of my career goals is doing comic covers, particularly one for Marvel. I'm already working freelance, and I know the goal is still a little further off, but I wanted to ask how exactly I should get in touch with the people in charge or land other comic cover gigs first before applying to Marvel. Thanks in advance, and good luck, Dave, with the broken Cintiq situation."
Oh my goodness, I'm so frustrated with these Cintiqs, dude. I am so sick of it.
Shouldn't have brought it up, Frederick.
I know, these piece of shit tools. I don't get Wacom. Why do they get away with this? All right. I think Twitter is probably the best way because I always see editors on there posting. Unless there's some other thing that I don't know about.
Do you think Twitter as far as like DM or like what?
Just reaching out and just seeing if you can contact them through their profile.
Oh, okay.
They may have email, they may have a website or something. There may be some way to reach out to them, but you want to contact editors for books that you want to work on, or if you're just trying to get in anywhere you can, all of them. Like you may want to just read, because it's not like Marvel or DC just has, one art director that does all of them.
Right. There's one for like the Spider-Man
team. Yeah.
And then there's one for like, that's like funny that we've said the same one.
Yeah, it's like if you want to do Spider-Man and Venom, you have to work for the people that I worked with.
Right.
For a long time.
Yeah.
It's like those people do those books.
Well, let's say, okay, so they know you. How would you start an email off? Like, how would that introduction go? "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'd really like to work for Marvel." Like, how? No, you don't do that, right? Or do you?
I would reach out and say, introduce yourself, obviously. Basic
introductions.
Yeah.
Precise.
Really simple. And then I would say, I hope you're doing well, that normal thing. And then just basically go into, I was wondering if there were any chance that you were looking for new artists for your publications. I would like to potentially work on covers if my work suits your needs. Put it in whatever words you want. And then you can either, I mean, I would say like attached are a few examples of my work, have them be related to what they're working on. So attach some Spider-Man stuff if you're sending to a Spider-Man person. If you have like general team like Avengers, and then you have X-Men and Spider-Man, like send them all of them, and just kind of have it so it crosses all of those bridges. But yeah, you want to send along just a few examples of what you would do for them. And yeah, that's really like most of it. The only thing that I would say that unless you do traditional, it's very hard to make a living as a comic cover artist. It
depends on where you
pay
live,
as
though.
much. It does depend where you live, but also it depends on who you're working for. Because I've worked for The Walking Dead, and they pay
A lot more
than double what Marvel pays.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but that's not a thing that you do like every month either. That was like a one-time thing.
No, but I could.
Yeah.
It's once you get those jobs and once you start doing good work for those, like I'll tell you this, like once I got on a roll with Marvel, I still get offers to work on Marvel covers every month, like at least 2 or 3 different covers. And I always have to say no just because of, you know, what we're doing, Patreon. And
you know what I think is really interesting about your industry? I feel like, or this industry in particular, it's just that like likability is a huge factor, because you're also selling yourself, because people will be working with you, you know, as opposed to qualifications. Like nobody would ever be like, God, that guy's such a dick, but he can really draw Spider-Man, so it's got to be him.
Well, that's what I was saying before. You can do that. If you're that guy, you're not likable, but you're amazing and you're always on time.
Yeah, but you have to have the other factor too. You can't just have
then
one.
You're fine.
Right. But if you're not well known and you're also not likable, like what?
Yeah, you need to put your best foot forward no matter what. It is for sure. I mean, you'll get the best results if you're all of those things. If you're great at what you do, you're great to talk to, and you always deliver.
Yeah.
Like then you never stop getting work. And that's definitely the case. It's not just a matter of being good at art in most cases, especially in the beginning. Yeah, it's a lot of being personable and having a relationship. Because I talk to them on the phone occasionally, so they know me, and I'm sure that they think of me because of that.
Yeah. Zachary A. Knapp says.
Well, this will probably be the last question, by the way, because we're approaching midnight.
Hey guys, long time lurker, first time lunger. First, lots of people who are first time in it. First off, glad to see you both are doing well, and that life has calmed enough for you to go full steam into Patreon. For the past few years, I've scrounged around the slimy sewers of the internet to find as much creamy, delicious content of yours as I could. So thank you. My questions. I imagine it depends on the job, but how often are you blue sky / shotgun designing, where you just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks? What percentage of those kinds of ideas actually stick around through the design process? And finally, I know you do so much of your own personal design work, but do you enjoy the open-ended prompts from clients as well? Or do you prefer narrower, more focused requests when you're getting that paper? When you're getting that paper. That's what I imagine it was meant to be read. Thanks again, Dave and Kim, for what you guys are doing. Keep the cream dream alive.
Well, we're creaming all the time, you know. That's what we gotta do. Milk bath.
Oh.
That's what I do.
It's trendy.
Yeah, I'm just soaking in it. I get the drip. Yeah, I'm always leaking cream.
Yep. You leaked some cream in 2 bathrooms today.
Well, that was diarrhea.
Oh.
It would be incredible if I was just masturbating into toilets and you were like,
Oh.
what is this?
Why does it smell like diarrhea?
You're like, I'm sick. Head strep. So I actually really enjoy the blue sky thing. Like, that's one of my favorite parts of any job if I do get that opportunity, because like I've done that twice this year where people have basically been like, we don't really know what this game's gonna be. Let's just come up with stuff. And I like that collaborative process a lot. And I definitely like it where they're like, we hired you because we like what you do, just go nuts.
Yeah, you're definitely like a ball spitter.
Yeah, that's me. I spit on the balls and I extract the cream. And that's what clients hire me for. So, yeah, like I really enjoy that. And I just kind of, I don't know, like I open up more, I think, and I start to come up with different ideas better. Because once I start having, like, limitations help to narrow those things down, like, but the blue sky time is great just to come up with everything and just go in multiple directions and see what sticks, and then be like, okay, now let's narrow the focus, and now let's be that same kind of blue sky but in this box. Like, can you stay within this box and come up with new ideas? So it's like a little bit more challenging, but it's interesting. So it's like you start big and kind of keep going down and down and down and down, but it's still creative, and you're still, you know, like it gets harder as it goes and it gets more nuanced. But overall, that's my favorite type of job. I like the ones where if I'm working on, like, if I'm working on, let's just go back to the Marvel thing. If I'm working on like my 7th Spider-Man cover, I'll get to a point, and this isn't, you know, this is just me personally, because I just like doing a lot of different things, where I'll just be bored, and I'll be like, like, part of me is like, I just want you to tell me what this cover is. Like, please don't just tell me it's Spider-Man.
Right.
And then that's
Well,
it.
when you did that entire series of like all of them, right?
Spider-Man Noir, that one.
Well, no, you did like just a bunch in a row. I remember like you're just like with the one that I told you about, the knitting one.
Oh, yeah.
At that point, you were just like, "Can you help me?" And I was like, "Oh, you should do this." And then you're like,
Yeah.
"Okay," and then you just did it, and I was really surprised because it's not like I don't suggest things often, but you don't usually go with what I have to offer because I don't have as good of an imagination as you do, but you usually will play off of something that I've said maybe, or like
Right.
it'll make you think of something else and then come up with something better. But you did literally what I just said, and I was like, I'm really surprised. You never do that.
Yeah, like I definitely will hit a wall with those types of jobs where I'm like, being blue sky with Spider-Man, like, it's still Spider-Man. So it's like after a certain point, it's like, I understand people who could just do that forever and come up with like multiple compositions. I think I just get bored. So yeah, I don't enjoy that as much. Did I miss a part of it? I thought I did.
No, I was just asking about like, you know, you do so much of your own personal design work. Do you enjoy the open-ended prompts?
Oh, yeah.
More focused when you're getting paper.
I will say the thing with those open-ended ones where you can just kind of go, that's when I actually get to use my designs. And I like to do, like, I'm not the kind of person that holds back on stuff. Like, I'm not like, this is mine. I'm not going to give that to them because I love this and I'm going to use it in my own thing. You can have this thing. Like, I always am looking for the best possible solution for what I'm trying to do for them. And I want it to be like the coolest thing that I can think of. So I love that, and I love putting everything that's me into a job. And then by the end of it, oh, this is the part I missed. By the end of it, in a game job, it will look nothing like what I did. That's the thing. Like, and it doesn't really matter to me. I just needed to put in, you know, it's like you're injecting yourself into something, and then whatever, like, you did the work, it still exists. And then wherever the game ends up, who knows? But a lot of times when you're working on the blue sky part, they're trying to sell to publishers. So it's putting together something to present what the game could be. And all of that is so early on in a game's development that by the end, it won't look, I mean, it might, but usually it won't look anything like that because it's going to go through so many iterations before it's done. And trends change during a development cycle and whatever. It's just, they get a better idea of what they're doing. Mechanics change in a game. Maybe the whole game changes, the whole
That's
perspective.
happened to you.
Yeah, it's like, so you never know, and you can't be married to it and worry about that stuff. You just kind of have to accept it and be like, you get my best no matter what we're doing.
Yep.
And I don't care. Like, I'm not, one of the best things about doing Steve Lichman and about doing personal projects and about doing this Patreon, it's like, I'm not so upset about client work not coming out. Like, that used to be a thing when I was younger, where I would be like, I put so much into this and now it doesn't exist. It's like, fuck. Like, now I have nothing to show. Or it's like, that was my way of kind of showing what I do. And they had so many revisions that now it's not even mine anymore. Like, I used to think that way to a certain extent. Like, I wasn't super beat up about it, but I used to feel that
art.
way. Of like,
It's my baby.
well, like, it could have been so much cooler if they just went with what I said in the beginning. Because I do so many things that are me, I do not give a shit if there's a million revisions on a piece in a video game or whatever, and they have a direction they want to go in that isn't what I pitched or whatever from the thumbnail or the sketches or the initial design. It's like, if they have a change, it doesn't matter to me. So I'm not married to that part of it where I'm so precious about everything that I do.
I think that's hard for people, though, like, to have their name attached to something that they don't necessarily like.
Yeah.
If it turns out to be something that they don't like in the end.
Well, it depends, though. It's like, if it were like Dave Rapose's Magic World or something like that, and it were my name there and they murdered it, it's like, yes, then I agree with you. But it's like, if I'm just one of a team and we're all a part of working on like Killer Instinct or something like that, it's like, then like, who cares? Like, it, you know, that thing of you thinking that you're that person that's like, you know, I'm the best, whatever, that like I should have had this thing. It's like, that's your own ego, and nobody else is gonna care.
Right.
So
we should do 2 more questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I just counted them. I think that will get us to a good stopping point.
Oh, all right.
As far as like splitting it in half so that the next one isn't super long. Mark Nosler said, "Hey Dave and Kim, love the new format. I wanted to get your thoughts on preparing a pitch for an option deal of some sort. What sort of story highlights would you focus on? How many characters would you introduce? How open would you keep things for the editor, feedback, etc.? I know certain artists want to hold on to the creative freedom, but is that potentially shooting yourself in the foot? I have the mindset of, if I can, in the door, I'm guessing.
They get your foot in the door.
Yeah, with one idea, I have a million more where that came from, and would always love to hear any new updates on Skull and Shark. # Team Cream."
Well, welcome to the crematorium. For pitches, I think that it depends what you're making. What is it? Is it like an action movie? Is it like some character-heavy show? Is it a narrative? Are you doing something like The Office? Like, what is it? Like, because those different formats, you can do a lot with the structure of how those shows or movies go, or books or whatever. I don't know what the pitch. I'm assuming if you're putting together a pitch, it's for some sort of production. That's usually why you do pitches, is for like TV or movies. Usually don't pitch a book
So for stories, because and we were just talking about writing and everything, and you've learned a lot more over the years. What story highlights would you focus on?
You want to go through the beats of it, but I would say that you want to know your story, whatever it is. But I think that the core of it is getting to know your main characters, obviously, but you need to know what the through line is, kind of introducing the world, introducing the occupation of the character, whatever it is. What's the conflict? How is this kind of first episode of a thing or the movie, whatever you end up making, how is it kind of encapsulated in this one thing for the rest of the season? Like, how does this kind of show what the whole thing will be like?
Like if it were like a pilot or something,
right?
Because that's all they get to see rather than like the entirety of it.
You want to kind of hint at what's to come, but you don't want to do everything.
You don't play all your cards.
Not that. I don't mean like hold back. I mean that you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to be like, here's the whole season in one episode of everything that they're gonna do. They're gonna go to a pirate cave, and then they're gonna go to the moon, and then they're gonna do this and that. And it's like, no, keep it so that you can focus on the character or characters, and make sure that you're in the place that they're going to mostly be as like a home base or something, wherever the story kind of jumps off from, so that you get to know that central location and understand the dynamics of everybody there before you take them all and plug them into all these fun scenarios.
Well, and then how many of those characters would you introduce in this pitch?
It depends on the format. So I think that you could do any number. Do you have a villain? Do you have a team of villains? Do you have a team of good guys? One good guy versus a whole bunch of villains? Is it a group of friends doing something together and has nothing to do with that kind of conflict? Is it interpersonal conflict?
I think that's
between
good.
People,
like to just like grouping them, because that organization helps people kind of like understand a storyline better too. Like, oh, like these 5 people were heroes or in a team. These 5 people were villains, and they're like they don't necessarily work together, but this is like their category.
Yeah, I mean,
they can understand your pitch a little bit better if they're not familiar with your world.
Yeah, most of what you're doing is developing the characters in the pitch, because I feel story's fine, the concept is obviously important, so the concept needs to be clear what you're doing. But the characters are the most important, I would say, in terms of relating. It's like if you can write believable characters that are interesting and funny, whatever, it's like, I feel like that, like if I've learned anything through like developing show stuff, is that's the most important. People need to be able to relate to your characters. And you want to get to know what's happening, not because you're saying exposition or whatever. You want to get to know what's happening in the story through showing what's happening. And then you also want to get to know how all of your characters interact with each other. What are their dynamics? That's super important, to get to know each one of them individually. And you want to devote a certain amount of time to the main people, just to do a basic rounding out of who they are by how they communicate, how they react to situations, things like that. But for the initial pitch, you would probably do like a 1-page summation of what the show is about, like generally speaking. So you would want to kind of go over that. If you're writing the initial like pilot pitch, that's when you get a little bit more specific. But if you're thinking like series overall, I would do something where you had the 1 page describing what happens in this universe, and then I would do the character pages and just have like a couple characters a page, show who they are in a drawing, have a basic write up for them next to that, and just run through that, and then show your antagonist or whoever the other characters that are going to be throughout the season, the mains, and then go from there. But
so then you write the pitch, this is what you do. You introduce the characters, the world, all of those things. And then they say, okay, now we want you to write a pilot. They're still not moving forward yet, but we're like, okay, we're interested enough for you to write a pilot. So now you're writing a pilot and you turn in your first draft, and it says, how open would you keep things for editor feedback?
I mean, no matter
Because they're not
what.
giving feedback on a pitch. They're going to give feedback on like something that's written like a pilot, right?
Yeah, your agent might give you feedback on the pitch or something, but I mean,
But an editor, like how do you respond to that?
editor for the pitch. I mean, the pilot. You're
For the
talking about.
pilot.
Well, if you're going to some kind of network or some production company, you're just going to have to roll with them or talk to them. It could be. There's a couple things with that. Sometimes, if they're interested and you are making a pitch, they want it. So, but they want it to be good. So they had interest in your idea in the first place.
And it's usually not one editor, right? It's usually like,
I mean, I guess it could be. It depends on where you are and what you're doing.
okay.
But yeah, I mean, we've been to a couple different studios that we've talked to those people. I mean, it's not like you work with an editor necessarily, and yeah, I mean, if you're doing the pilot, you're probably working with like a couple producer people, and they're going to be kind of, they hopefully they are writers too, so that they can help you. Even if you're a beginner in those places, I feel most of those people are pretty generous just because they want to help you figure it out. Because, how many people get started in TV, or movies, it's like pretty low. So they're gonna want to just talk it through with you. It's not as daunting as you'd think. I felt like revisions was more clarification than anything else. So they'd be like, don't really understand what this is. Like a lot of what you're going to get back on that is kind of boundaries and rules for what your world is, what things are, how things work. Why does this character want this and whatever, what's this dynamic going on here? Like, could you flesh that out? Like, there's a whole bunch of little things that they're going to touch on. It can feel a little intense sometimes, those sort of things, but you want to have grace with all of that and understand that these people aren't in your head. So you want to be completely open to criticism and just take their advice. And if something that they say to you is so against your idea that it changes it, then you want to be open about that. But if it's within reason and it's something that's just basically them asking questions as to like, what is this? Like, just
Explain it.
Yeah. Then that sort of thing is valid. Because if somebody's reading through a thing and they just don't get it, it's like, then yes, it might be, that's probably a pretty valid criticism and you should take it. But you should take all criticism. Because it's not again, it's that thing that I mentioned earlier. If they're coming from a place of fear, the criticism that I like the least, which I think is kind of common, is the thing where smart people who will probably be the people revising what you're doing, they assume that the whole audience is really stupid. And so they come from that perspective of lowering your idea down to the level of that audience and making it digestible for them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I don't think that that's right. Like, I think that it's too pandering to do that, and I don't think that works in all cases. So it's kind of riding that line of like, where is this coming from? Do they really not get it, or are they worried
that
other people won't get it, but they get it, but nobody's as smart as us, kind of thing? Like, I get it, but I'm worried about blah 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 getting it. Like, those are kind of the ones that you have to maybe push back on a bit and be like, no, I think people will get it pretty quick. Like, I'm not super worried about that kind of thing. But
so then
compromise is important.
Then that's basically the next question is like, I know certain artists want to hold on to the creative freedom, but is that shooting yourself in the foot? So like, you want to hold on to all of that. You get past the pilot, they pick it up, it's a show. Now you're writing episodes 1 through 10.
If it comes back to a similar thing as that Neil Gaiman thing. It's like you have to be pretty great and pretty prolific and well known, whatever, before you can have that kind of sway. Where you're like, no, my artistic freedom is what's most important, so no to your ideas. If somebody's going to invest millions in you, what just happened?
I don't know. Did you hear that?
We just heard a bang.
I'm not really sure what that was.
Well, if somebody's going to put a whole bunch of money into one of your ideas, then you're going to have to bow a little bit to what they request. It's like that's such a huge part of it. People investing into you, their time and their money, and they're backing you, and you're part of a team now. Again, like, it's not just your artistic vision. You're the one who's pitching this thing. So they don't want to take as much of a risk if it is risky to work on your thing, and they're going to edit your thing in such a way where they turn it into less of a risk for them. So that's a part of your vision that will end up being compromised in the long run with, anything that you develop for TV or film.
And then the last part was just, any updates on Skull and Shark, but nothing right now.
No, nothing yet.
Last question for part 1.
Sure.
Alfred Manzano commented earlier and has his own question. Hey, Dave and Kim. I have a question about the time you get on each... good thing this is the last question. I can't read. I have a question about the time you get on each client project. Have you ever had an issue with a client who wanted something within a couple days but originally told you had a month to do it? What would you do besides smashing them with lightning?
A client who suddenly throws at you that you have a couple of days instead of a month? No.
It wasn't a yes or no question.
What would I say?
No, what would you do?
I would say no. I would say, okay, well, that's not what you hired me for, so good luck.
Yeah.
Like, unless they're lording over you that this is the only job you're ever going to get. Me personally, right now, with the options that I have, never. They have to tell me their deadlines and be honest. If they can't be honest with me, it's like, unless I have a stake in this thing where, like,
yeah, like,
I'm a part of it and I understand where they're coming from, and oh fuck, that thing that we thought was going to be whatever is that, it's like, no, they bite that bullet, not you. If they're responsible in their company, they have to eat that shit, or they compensate you for that much of an ask. It's like, if they're going to do that, like, I don't get that, but I've had a thing where movie people who want production artwork for print stuff, it's like they'll reach out and be like, we need something in 24 hours. And then it's like, okay, well, my normal rate doesn't apply anymore. It's like, if you want something in 24 hours and I have to stay up tonight, then you're paying me a little more than double.
Yeah.
It's like, then that's when I get into those talks. If I had to take the job, I would do something like that. I would say, okay, sure, you're in a bind. It's like, I understand your position. I can empathize. It's like, but in order for me to take it on and deliver by then, given that you told me I had a month, I'm going to need this much extra. So that's how I would deal with it. Because unless your contract is crazy, like, if you signed a contract and it says, and that's okay for them to do that to you, like, there's probably nothing written that's saying, like, you still have to deliver by this new date.
Yeah.
So fuck that. Like, if it's your friend or something, and it's somebody you've worked with forever, and you trust them and you actually really like them a lot, you can have that like honest conversation of like, well, we have to figure something out. It's like, because that's a lot to ask of me, and I don't know if I'll
That's
be
a
able
big
to
ask.
do it.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's either going to be way worse than you wanted it to be,
Yeah.
or you're going to need to pay me more to like stay up all night or do something different, because that's crazy. But yeah, it's irresponsible of that client to put that on you now.
Yeah,
They need to meet you halfway in some way.
I've never been in this position ever, but if I were, I feel like I would say something like, you know, I understand that this may be stressful, but you know, I expect from you the same professionalism that I'm bringing to the table.
Exactly. That's why I said no in the beginning. Because if anybody I'm working with, if anybody I was working with were that unprofessional to me, and they were just like, okay, now I need it by this day, I would just say, oh, okay, well, it was, you know, I appreciate the offer to work on this project. Our initial agreement was a month. I mean, I wouldn't literally say no, but it's like, you know, I would say this. Our initial agreement was a month. The job has changed, and it's not, you know, unfortunately, it's not the timeline or the job I thought it was.
Or that we
I
agreed upon.
to.
Yeah.
It's like, so I can't do it. Be like, but, you know, best of luck with everything. You know, I hope it works out, but I can't, you know. I wouldn't have said yes to the job if it were this.
Yeah.
I always, you know, I've done that before. I've had to say that to clients of saying, like, if I knew going into this that this would be what the job turned out to be, it's like, then I wouldn't have agreed to it.
You've also had clients who they've like said, oh, we don't need it. Like, I mean, similar to this, right? Like, we don't need it until next year, whatever, right? But then they start asking, like, hey, can we see it though? Like, can we get it?
Right.
Which is like, and you've like clarified, has your timeline changed? No, but we just want to. I mean, no. There's no need for it right now. You should have given me a different deadline, and we should have agreed upon it if that were the case.
Right.
Still, like, you know. That's happened to you. That's a real situation that has happened to you.
Yeah, it's just being firm and, you know, being professional. Like, you can't be, like, that person is more at risk of burning a bridge than you are.
It's that gentle,
by doing that.
It's that gentle parenting that we talked about in the other video of, like, firm but gentle.
Right.
You don't have to say, like, no, you stupid. You just go, no. And that's enough.
You just, thanks for the offer, but I can't.
Yeah.
Thank you, though. You know. Bye. Yeah.
And just know that, like, I think this is very important too, that people will take what you give them. And so, like, you have to be careful of giving too much of yourself, and you have to look out for yourself too.
I mean,
you don't have an HR between you and this client who's protecting you, or, like, you know, your best interest or anything like that. You have to have your best interest in mind when you're accepting these jobs, or, like, whatever situation you're putting yourself into to complete this job.
Yeah, I also take the opportunity in those moments to try to protect other artists. It's like people walk all over artists because not enough stick up for themselves.
Yeah, that was that thing about, like, people agreeing to lower rates.
Yeah, it's
and
like, no, I don't tell rates on here all the time just to respect the companies. But when it comes to people I know who work in the industry, if anybody tells me they work for anything, I tell them the rates I get paid, because I don't want them to make less than me. And if they're making more, then I want to know that too, so that all of us can keep that consistent or grow or get what we should be getting. We should be compensated for the work we're doing. And the same thing goes for if you get that thing where somebody's like, oh, will you do this job now in a couple days? Then that's who you are to them. And then they'll treat you that way from that point
Next
forward.
time they need something?
Yeah, then they know that they can push you around like that and just be like, oh, you need me.
Yeah, they don't need to sleep. They did it last time.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, whatever. Like, things change. They get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you can't do that to somebody.
They're flexible. They'll
like
say it in a nice way.
You have to stick up for yourself, and you have to be firm in those things, because then you don't want another artist down the road getting treated that way, because it's horrible. And you know, you'll ruin that person. It's like, and it just gives a bad name for all of us to kind of put up with that sort of treatment, which I've had to deal with in the past. You know, I've talked about it on here before. It's in one of these Q&As where I talked about my relationship with White Wolf when I worked for them in the early part of my career. I was probably like 3 years maybe into my career. And that was like one of the early jobs I got, working in print, and I was working on their RPG, and they weren't paying me on time. They had a thing where they were going to pay me, like, that job anyway was pretty ridiculous in terms of when they paid you, their net terms. So I'm pretty sure it was like, I mean, more ridiculous in the sense, I actually think sometimes it's worse in some places, but at the time it was ridiculous. They paid every 3 months. And so it was 3 months after completion, and they didn't pay me for over 6 months. And it was, I think they didn't pay me for 9 months, I want to say. And I kept reaching out to them, and I reached out to them at the 9-month point, and I was like, you guys haven't paid me for this. And I was like so early in my career that I like had to do math on what I was making in order to pay all of my bills. So I wasn't going to be able to afford money for rent. I had to borrow money from Devin Platts, who's another concept artist. Shout out to Devin for taking care of me.
Shout out Devin. I don't know.
Devin Platts, he's a good dude. But I had to borrow money from him. And I think I had to borrow money from my dad, and I don't remember who else during that time, because I was so behind and I did so much work for them. I got on the phone with that guy, and he said that, maybe I didn't get on the phone with him. I'm probably mixing two things. I think in an email he said something along the lines of, I shouldn't be complaining. I should be like lucky to have
You
like,
should
the
be
job.
thanking him
Yeah. And I was just like,
for even,
and that was the last
being able
time,
to work for them.
That's the last time I ever talked to them or worked for them. I eventually got paid. I can't remember when, but I remember just saying, like, I responded to that email. I probably have it saved somewhere, but I remember saying that email, like, I'll never work for you again. Like, you're super rude. Like, you're a terrible client. I was like, I'm going to tell everybody, this is how you treat artists. And, you know, I'm not saying that all of White Wolf is this, but that was my experience with that art director at that company. And I mean, that's why I'm saying White Wolf and not just random company, because it was just so off-putting. It's entry level anyway, so it's super difficult, and you're getting paid nothing. Like, I think I got paid like $90 or $80 in illustration.
That's painful.
And I did a ton for the book, and I just wasn't prolific. I didn't have a ton of work coming in.
Yeah.
So I just did everything I could.
Well, and especially if your illustrations are taking you a lot longer too. So taking you a couple days, and you're like, or weeks, or however long, and you're like, that was $90.
Yeah, I mean, like, I never even put it in my head at that time that, like, I could go work at McDonald's and make more than I'm making doing this.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't even, because I was just like, whatever, like, this is what I want to do. I'm just going to bite the bullet and just use all of these to get better. And, like, that whole time period was hilarious. There were a lot of moments like that. But even then, even when I was, like, dead broke and that person was trying to fuck me over, it's like I still told him, like, no, like, never again, and never going to work for you. And I think that, you know, that should be a regular thing with artists. Just as soon as somebody does the first, you know, push, it's like, you know, give an inch and take a mile type of deal. It's like you can't let them get away with it. You just have to be like, okay, I guess I'm just not eating. Whatever. I won't be treated that way.
Yeah.
I might be poor, but fuck that.
Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, anytime that happens, stick up for yourself. So that's my very serious end to this Patreon Q&A.
Yeah, part 2 will come shortly after.
Yeah. All in all, feeling okay with the throat. I'm starting to get a little thick, though. I'm feeling that soreness coming in.
You're a thickie anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, thanks for all the questions so far, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, talk to you all soon. See you later.
Bye.